Hey kids, again, this is Mrs. Wolf. This unit, we're going to talk about the importance of kindness. So what is kindness? Think about that for a minute. What is kindness? You can be kind to others. You can be a kind person, right? This unit is the importance of kindness. And during that, we're going to be reading different books together. And all of these have a theme. What did I say the theme was? The importance of what? Kindness, I hope you said. Usually when we're in the classroom, I'd have you say that out loud, but we're not able to be on loud. So you guys are just going to have to either say it out loud where you are or just think it. So these are the books we're going to be reading in the next unit. So about this week, maybe a little bit longer. And we have, why is it important to be kind to others? I want you to think about that. Why is that important or vital to be kind to others? Think about that for a minute. I know one, you can make someone feel better by being kind to them. And I know that when I feel good, I perform better and I am nicer to others. So it's kind of like a domino effect. Showing kindness can make a difference in someone's life. Being kind to someone that maybe isn't treated the best can change someone's life. Isn't that incredible? So I was walking in the grocery store, and even like someone just smiling at me and showing that kindness changed so much for me. And it feels good when someone is kind to you. So those are 3 reasons why it's important to be kind to others. And we're going to keep bringing up this overall theme as we're reading. Today, we're going to be reading Enemy Pie. And this title is very interesting. It says, "For My Best Enemy." The title of the book is Enemy Pie, and the author is Derek Munson. I'm curious about the title, though. What do you think you'd want to give an enemy something like a delicious pie? Why would you want to give them a delicious pie? Does it look delicious? Let's read to find out what enemy pie is and if it can really help get rid of an enemy. Do you think it could? I don't know. Let's find out. And I do have sticky notes in my books because that's where I learned when to stop. So enemy pie. We have a summary in the corner here. I always like to read these. It just gives you kind of a preview of what we're about to read. It says, "It was the perfect summer. That is until Jeremy Ross moved into the house down the street and became enemy number 1. Luckily, Dad had a surefire way to get rid of enemies. Enemy pie. But one of the secret ingredients is spending an entire day with the enemy. In this funny yet enduring story, one little boy learns an effective recipe for turning a best enemy into a best friend, with charming illustrations that bring to life the difficulties and ultimate rewards of making new friends. Enemy Pie serves up a sweet lesson in friendship, which links to our overall theme of kindness." It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse in our backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been a perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood, right next to the door to my best friend Stanley. I did not like Jeremy Ross. He laughed at me when he struck me out in the baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline, and I wasn't even invited. But my best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list until he moved into the neighborhood. But as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go in. So enemy number 1, Jeremy Ross. This is important right here. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He had told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too, but he knew of a way to get rid of them. I asked him to tell me how. Tell me how, I'll show you how, he said. He pulled a really old recipe book out of the kitchen shelf. Inside, there was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad held it up and squinted at it. Enemy pie, he said, satisfied. You may be wondering what exactly is an enemy pie. I was wondering too. But Dad said the recipe was so secret, he couldn't even tell me. I decided it must be magic. I begged him to tell me something, anything. I will tell you this, he said. Enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies. Now, of course, this got my mind working. What kind of things, disgusting things, would I put into a pie for an enemy? I brought Dad some weeds from the garden, but he just shook his head. I brought him earthworms and rocks, but he didn't think he'd need those. I gave him the gum I've been chewing all morning. He gave it right back to me. So we're going to pause because I have a sticky note here. What do you think of a pie that can get rid of enemies? Think about that. What do you think about a pie that can get rid of enemies? Do you think it's good? Bad? Would you like to try it? How do you think it works? So I think about that a pie to get rid of enemies would be really probably cool because sometimes I do have enemies. We all have enemies or someone that we dislike. I don't know how it works. Maybe you eat it and then you magically feel better or feel better about them or they disappear. What do you think might be in the enemy pie? If I made an enemy pie, I would put all the gross things inside of it. Usually, I would have you guys stop and talk, but we can't do that right now. So you get to talk to your partner, Mrs. Wolf. I went out to play alone. I shot baskets until the ball got stuck off the roof. I threw a boomerang that never came back to me, and all the while I listened to the sounds of my dad chopping and stirring and blending the ingredients of enemy pie. This could be a great summer after all. Enemy pie was going to be awful. I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell, or worse yet, what it would look like. But when I was in the backyard looking for ladybugs, I smelled something really, really good. And as far as I could tell, it was coming from our kitchen. I was a bit confused. I went in to ask Dad what was wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good. But Dad was smart. If enemy pie smelled bad, your enemy would never eat it, he said. I could tell he'd made enemy pie before. The buzzer rang and Dad put on the oven mitts and pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked like plain old pie. It looked good enough to eat. I was catching on. But still, I wasn't really sure how enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out, or their breath stinky. Maybe it made bullies cry. I asked Dad, but he was no help. He wouldn't tell me a thing. But while the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job. I have another sticky note. So, why do you think the boy's dad won't tell him how enemy pie works? Why do you think that? I think that maybe he's not telling him how enemy pie works because maybe it's a trick. Maybe thumbs up if you agree, thumbs down if you don't. Maybe you think something different. He talked quietly. There's one part of enemy pie that I can't do. In order for it to work, you need to spend a day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. It's not easy. That's the only way that enemy pie can work. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Of course I was. It sounded horrible. It was scary, but it was worth a try. All I had to do was spend one day with Jeremy Ross. Then he'd be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I rode my bike to his house and knocked on his door. When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. He stood on the other side of the screen door and looked at me, waiting for me to say something. I was nervous. Can you play? I asked. He looked confused. I'll go ask my mom, he said. He came back with his shoes in his hand. His mom walked around the corner to say hello. You boys stay out of trouble, she said, smiling. Jeremy is surprised and confused because he and the boy are not friends, right? And he's asking him to do that. That would make me a little confused too. I think that it's him scratching his head. We rode bikes for a while and played on the trampoline. Then we made new water balloons and threw them at the neighbors' girls. But we missed. Jeremy's mom made us lunch. After lunch, we went over to my house. It was strange, but I was kind of having fun with my enemy. He almost seemed nice. But of course I couldn't tell Dad that, since he had worked so hard to make this enemy pie. Jeremy Ross liked my basketball hoop. He said he wished he had a basketball hoop, but he didn't have room for one. I let him win a game, just to be nice. Jeremy Ross knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it, and it came right back to him. I threw it, and it went over my house and into my backyard. When we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my treehouse. My treehouse was my treehouse. I was the boss. If my sister wanted in, I didn't have to tell her, or I didn't have to let her. If my dad wanted in, I didn't have to let him. And if Jeremy wanted in, can we go in it? He asked. I knew he was going to ask me that, but he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list, and enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me how to throw a boomerang, and he did have me over for lunch, and he did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy. Okay, I said, but hold on. I climbed up ahead of him and tore the enemy list off the wall. I had a checkerboard and some cards in the treehouse, and we played games until my dad called us down for dinner. We pretended we didn't hear him, and when he came out to get us, we tried to hide from him, but somehow he found us. What are you thinking about this? Like, why do you think the boy tears down the enemy list off the wall? What do you think that is? I think it is so he doesn't upset his new friend. Otherwise, he would see it, right? I had a quiet connection. In my class, we do quiet connections like this when you connect to something. And I know that when Mr. Wolf sometimes tells me to do something, I ignore him like he's ignoring his dad. Austin, whoops. Dad made us macaroni and cheese for dinner. My favorite. It was Jeremy's favorite too. Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think that maybe we should just forget about enemy pie. But sure enough, after dinner, Dad brought out the pie. I watched as he cut the pie into 8 thick slices. Dad, I said, it sure is nice having a new friend in the neighborhood. I was trying to get his attention and trying to tell him that Jeremy Ross was no longer my enemy. But Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was just pretending. Dad dished up 3 plates, side by side, with big pieces of pie and giant scoops of ice cream. He passed one to me and one to Jeremy. Wow, Jeremy said, looking at the pie. My dad never makes pie like this. It was at that point that I panicked. I didn't want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. I couldn't let him eat it. Jeremy, don't eat it. It's a bad pie. I think it's poisonous or something. Jeremy's fork stopped before reaching its mouth. One second, I'll call you back. I'm recording. Jeremy's fork stopped before reaching its mouth. He grumbled his eyebrows and looked at me funny. I felt relieved. I'd saved his life. I was a hero. The boy may have saved Jeremy from eating something awful. Do you think that he did? Did he save him from eating something gross? At this point, I'm kind of thinking that maybe Dad played a trick on him. Maybe it was a good pie. If it's so bad, Jeremy asked, then why is your dad already eating half of it? I turned to look at my dad. Sure enough, he was eating enemy pie. Good stuff, he mumbled through a mouthful. And that was all he said. I sat there watching them eat enemy pie for a few seconds. Dad was laughing. Jeremy was happily eating, and neither of them was losing any hair. It seemed safe enough, so I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. What? After dessert, Jeremy rode his bike home, but not before inviting me over to play on his trampoline in the morning. He said he'd teach me how to flip. As for enemy pie, I still don't know how to make it. I still wonder if enemies really do hate it, or if their hair falls out of and their breath turns bad. But I don't know if I'll ever get an answer because I just lost my best enemy. Were you surprised with the ending? I was surprised when he said, I just lost my best enemy. Why or why not were you surprised with the ending? The whole time I had a feeling that maybe Dad was playing a trick on him because he said he will only make enemy pie if he spends the entire day with his enemy and plays with him. So I'm kind of thinking there was an ulterior motive. We are going to respond to the text. So in Seesaw, I wrote a question, and it was, what was the lesson of the story? So this is how I want you to set it up. You can write Enemy Pie by Derek Munson. And then it says the boy had a problem. Jeremy Ross was an enemy. His dad got him to help or to be kind to Jeremy. He learned that when you're kind to people, you can make them friends instead of enemies. Dad was kind in the way he helped the boy make a new friend. So here they're explaining the story. You need to tell me what the lesson is of the story, or the moral. What was the story's main point? You're going to type that in Seesaw. It's an extra, like a little assignment, and it's labeled Enemy Pie. Sound cool? Okay. I will see you later on. Bye.